Is this as good as the notebook gets?
It's got a lot worse than this. Wow. It's got much worse than this. How did you know I was doing? How did you know I was doing the notebook?
Well, you just said.
Oh, did I? Oh, yeah. Notebook. So I did. Yeah. So I did.
I mean, you gave it away a little bit. Would you mind spinning around?
Why's Goddard's wife got your fire suit on? Why's Brittany got your fire suit on?
Because why not? We're stealing them.
I venture to say they both look better than you in a fire suit.
We feel that we're allowed to, and I'm actually still wearing my race suit. You haven't even noticed that.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
it doesn't smell of sweat at all. That's not the real.
12 laps. It is. I only did 12 laps. Okay. Yeah. I mean, your notebook's relatively interesting sometimes.
Do you know what I remember?
But anyway, more importantly, this one is king. It's JB's notebook. Here we are. There's a guy called Ted over here. Mr. Kravitz, Lenny's brother, from what I've heard. We're here walking down the pit lane. Great win. It was Nico, wasn't it, the one?
No, well, look, Nico won the championship, yeah.
Great win for Nico. We didn't watch the end of the race, but fantastic for him and his family, especially mini Nico. It's sad for Lewis, you know, for me, you know, Lewis has done a great job all year. You look at the last few races, you know, he's won every race. Nico's been just behind him, so it's a shame for him. He's had reliability issues. Malaysia, he lost 28 points to Nico Rosberg, so it's hurting him right now. I'm sure it's like a stake in the heart, but next year he's going to come back. He's going to win his 4th world title. So, yeah, all is good in Abu Dhabi. We're going to go out and have some fun, and Ted's not coming with because he's boring. He's all Formula One and stats and stuff like that. But anyway, I'll leave you with him. JB signing out.
If you don't mind being paid the living wage, then you can have the job next year, okay?
No, thanks. See you later, guys.
See you, Jenson.
JB.
Don't think there's much more to add. Jenson Button, what a top man. Apart from, I remember when he first came in, John Button, I was a junior on the other channel at the time, and I was given the job of escorting John Button from the TV compound where we were interviewing him over to the other side. And John couldn't believe his luck that they both finally made it to Formula One, and just hoped that they'd be around for a few years. And what do you know, 15 years, 16 years later, he's got a man that we can truly say is a world champion, a top bloke, as you've just seen, and an absolute ace of Formula One. I know we won't see the last of him. Right, should we sort of mill around while we do Haas F1? I was going to start with Haas F1, Lee, so let's just head towards the back and we can see who else we can pick up. And, well, they actually had a good race to end the season. And what a season it's been. I think we have to give absolute credit to Haas F1 because I think their achievement to finish 8th in the Constructors' Championship out of 11 is outstanding for a brand new team. So it's been a great year. Yes, all those points were scored in Australia and Bahrain earlier on in the year, but still, on the balance of the season, they've done very well. And they did very well today. They were only a place off the point. Romain Grosjean 11th, Esteban Gutierrez 12th, and Romain Grosjean felt somewhat that he'd been beaten up today by Verstappen and some other drivers as well. Verstappen's overtake on him, Gutierrez called, well, he drove like an idiot and not fair. So take that from that what you will. Esteban Gutierrez ends the year as one of the few drivers with no points whatsoever, and that's very disappointing show from Esteban Gutierrez. You have to ask yourself, is he good enough for Formula One? Will he be in Formula One next year, or will he make a much tipped move maybe to another racing category? We will see. But unfortunately, he's had some bad luck, of course. He's finished 11th many times, of course, but it's just not good enough really for Esteban Gutierrez, I'm afraid to say. No points in a car where Romain Grosjean scored them all and led Haas to finish 8th in the Constructors. Right, Manor. Well, they did the job they needed to do today, which both drivers finished ahead of both Saubers. Pascal Wehrlein was 14th and Esteban Ocon was 13th, but it wasn't enough, and they dropped down to last of all, 11th in the Constructors. Not a good day for Manor after the disappointment of Brazil. They couldn't rescue a result. Wehrlein was fighting with Ericsson, Ocon was fighting with Nasser. Both of them clashed, and then Ocon and Wehrlein clashed themselves, and Ocon overtook Wehrlein in the over the runoff area, and they had to give places back, exchange places, and it was all very messy. So, yeah, not a great end to the season. 11th and last in the Constructors. Now, up 3. From 9th to 6th in the Constructors is McLaren. But Jenson Button, you've heard all about, had a broken right front suspension problem, which led to a failure of that suspension. We think it was from hitting the chicane, but then Jenson said that he didn't treat that chicane curve as any differently from how he had at any other lap, so really there's still a bit of an uncertainty what's going on. Alonso was in the top 10. He finished 10th today, and that means that he stays in the drivers' top 10 by 1 point from Felipe Massa, which is impressive considering the car that he has had. Alonso did a similar thing to Sebastian Vettel in the end. He put the super soft on in the end, and he made up 15 seconds out of Felipe Massa and almost got Felipe Massa for 9th. But I've got to say, it's a very, very emotional day at McLaren Racing. Not only did they have the loss, of course, of Dr. Aki Hintze, the team's doctor, earlier on this week. They had Jenson Button leaving, although he's in fine fettle, as you can say. But they also lost one of their top marketing men. He was the head of marketing sponsor relations, Peter Stainer, and his loss is being very keenly felt in this team. So you can understand that it's a very sad place team at the moment. So well, you know, we can only wish them all the best for a more successful 2017. I'm sure they will. Right, I think we've done Sauber, haven't we? No, we haven't. Marcus Ericsson 15th and Felipe Nasr 16th. They were behind the Manners, but it didn't matter. Marcus Ericsson started on the soft and went to the life of the tyre to lap 39, and then went on the super soft to the end. They had a big fight with Manor, but all they needed to do today was to make sure that Manor didn't finish in any kind of points, and they did that. So job done. 10th in the Constructors, down 2 from 8th in the Constructors to 10th, but considering they could have been 11th, that's not too bad at all. So job done for Sauber today. Staying where they are, 7th in the Constructors, is Toro Rosso, but it was a gearbox failure for both this man on the right, Carlos Sainz, and Danny Kvyat. Sainz put up a good fight. It was a pleasure for me, he said on the radio, to work with you this year, and his engineer said it was becoming a good race. But then Carlos said that there are some stupid people like Palmer out there who are doing stupid moves. You didn't really mean that about Jolyon, did you? Stupid people like Palmer out there doing some stupid moves? I guess it's not the first time he's bashed into a Toro Rosso in the last 2 races.
Poor Jolyon. No, he came to apologize. In the end, you know, it's racing, adrenaline, racing spirit. But yeah, it shouldn't happen.
All right. It probably means absolutely not one iota to you, but you are the Notebook's joint 4th star of the season.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's a pleasure for me to join that particular Notebook, and it's an honor for me. You, Alonso, Perez, and Verstappen. Some good names to join. You've had a brilliant season, so well done, Chile. Thank you. Brilliant. Well done. Oh, hasn't he got hairy arms? Never noticed that before. Right, let's move on to Renault, shall we? We've done Toro Rosso. That was terrible. Kvyat on a bike, wasn't it? Oh, what an image to leave the season with. And Renault, I think, chins are slightly down on the floor because it's been a horrible season for them. Yes, they knew at the start of the year with this change from the Mercedes engine last year to the Renault engine this year that it wouldn't be so good. But man, you know, I mean, they've dropped down to 9th in the Constructors, down 3 places. Kevin Magnussen was DNF with a suspension problem after a clash earlier on, and Jolyon Palmer 17th. A terrible start from Kevin Magnussen, damage on the front wing, etc., etc. Jolyon Palmer, we just heard, bumped into Sainz, given a 5-second time penalty, and it all just ended really, really badly for Renault. So again, let's hope that a great mark like that can get a little bit better next year. Now, from the despond of the yellow team to the joy and delight of Force India, because it's their best ever finish in the Constructors. Yes, I know, when they were Jordan, you with me, Lee? I know when they were Jordan, they finished much higher up in that. So this Silverstone team has finished higher in the Constructors, but not as Force India. They haven't. So they secured it as soon as Bottas went out. They secured P4 as soon as Bottas went out, and it was a spirited fight that Sergio Perez had with Ricciardo, but as soon as they went out, they just concentrated on getting the 2 cars home. 8th for Sergio Perez and 7th for Nico Hülkenberg. Just a quick preview for next year. Look at the width of these tyres. Crikey, that is next year's wet, and we can see next year's Inter over here. That's the rear tyre. Wow, look how wide is that. I don't know whether I need to stand next to it to give you any sense of scale, but you can see it already. Look at these. This is much better, isn't it? Much better. Oh,
And that's what we're going to get next year. So just a little taster of for next year's tyres. We're going to go very, very retro back to the early 90s, aren't we, in the 80s. That'll be fantastic. Right, let's just finish quickly with everybody else. Daniel Ricciardo, second in the Constructors, of course, one place up for Red Bull, and Daniel Ricciardo fifth, Max Verstappen fourth. Verstappen had a spin at the start, of course, and that can put him on the other strategy, a recovery strategy, which of course a one-stop, and Verstappen drove brilliantly to make that one-stop work and hold on to fourth at the end. Yes, Sebastian Vettel got past him, but still. And disappointment for Daniel Ricciardo. He had a bad set of tyres. They think there was a little bit of a flat spot going on, but otherwise he possibly could have done, well, he couldn't have done much better than that. There is Ricciardo. He's just posing for a photo. He's just about to leave the building. But a great drive over the balance of the season. One win for Ricciardo, of course. One win for Verstappen as well. So a very, very, very good season for Red Bull, beating Ferrari into second in the Constructors. Right, Williams, and a pretty miserable day to round off their season. Bottas with a DNF. He had a problem because it was actually a damper. This was an interesting one. A damper had locked down, and actually that's what was causing the vibration that Bottas felt was completely impossible to carry on. So I suppose you could call it a suspension failure of sorts. But he was a DNF. He couldn't continue. And the other thing was that Massa, he finished ninth in a very, very spirited race, and he fought until the last lap of his career, did Felipe Massa, to finish ninth in the race. So well done to him. Yes, lads. Oh, hello. All right, they're just shouting it. Thank you for the season. Well done. I mean, yeah, not necessarily today, but over the balance of the season. Well done, lads. All right, good. I want to say hello. So that was Williams. Yeah, that was Williams' issues today. Ferrari third in the Constructors. Of course, they dropped down one place from second to third. Kimi Räikkönen with a great start, going up to third, but they couldn't really make it work for him. And Sebastian Vettel with that good strategy. They didn't really have any choice, actually. He was either going to stay sixth, and so he said, look, let's go long, put the super soft on at the end. And man, Bob, that generator's seen better days, hasn't it? That compressor, phew. What are we going to lose? We're stuck in sixth at the moment. What are we going to lose? We'll only finish sixth, but it was actually got him onto the podium. So a very, very strong final race for Sebastian Vettel. And maybe that will give him some kind of optimism for next year, because talking to a lot of people around the paddock, optimism seems to be in a bit of a short supply for Ferrari at the moment. But you never know, they might get it together on the aero department, and a little bit of power as well. And you never know, the new tyres might suit both Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen. And Mercedes, just finally, oh, I just forgot to say about Jenson Button. I did ask McLaren, why didn't you think about pitting him and repairing the front suspension, or and actually sending him back out so he could take the checkered flag? And they kind of said, oh, well, you know, we thought it would take too long and didn't really think of it at the time, and just seemed like, you know, Jenson was out of the car and it stopped. So it seemed like it might have been a nice idea. We were talking about it in commentary, but they never really had that idea to do it. They could have done it. It might have taken them 10 laps to actually fix it, but they could have done it and sent him out, but they never really imagined that they would do that. Right, Bob, just see what you can see at the back of the garage. I'll tell you all about Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, of course, won the race. Nico Rosberg did what he had to do, finished second, and is the world champion. Increasingly fraught towards the end, but actually, I think if anything sort of sums up what Nico Rosberg doing what he needed to do this season, it was actually the overtake of Verstappen, because that was risky. As he said so himself in the press conference, you know, that was the risk of a championship. To overtake Max, anything could have happened, but great risk management in the way that Nico Rosberg actually overtook Verstappen and made sure it all stayed clean. So that was a great move and really sort of made life, I was going to say made life a little bit easier towards the race, but then you know what happened. You can discuss whether everything that you want, whether it's it was sportsmanlike or not sportsmanlike, or mercenary or not. Fulsome in his praise for Nico Rosberg was Lewis Hamilton in the press conference. That's certainly true, although the first thing Lewis said when he spoke to us was congratulations to Nico. So I think they're sort of picking their quotes when they want to. But it certainly was left to Sebastian Vettel in the press conference, at least, to congratulate Nico Rosberg. And the other thing that I'll tell you about is this story that Martin Brundle asked Lewis Hamilton about whether it was true. You know, now the truth can be told. What happened after the Spanish Grand Prix when they collided? So the story, the rumor is, the story behind the scenes is that Lewis Hamilton, in the midst of the discussions, the team discussions and recriminations after they collided in Spain, decided to quit the Mercedes team. He said, right, that's it, I'm not driving anymore for this season. The team went into a slight bit of panic. Do you remember at the time, Pascal Wehrlein was drafted in very quickly, replacing Esteban Ocon to drive for Mercedes in the test, and we all thought, well, that's a bit odd, but Mercedes said, oh no, we just want a more experienced driver to test the car, and wasn't so sure about that. And then they suddenly decided to advance and accept Nico Rosberg's request that he has a 2-year contract instead of a 1-year contract. So when Martin Brundle asked Lewis Hamilton after the race, you would have heard it, about whether that was true. Lewis said that was private. He didn't deny it, of course, which he could have done, but he didn't deny it. But that is the story. We have no way of really knowing whether that's true or not, although we do have some sources, pretty good, well-placed sources, who suggest that it was true. So that was the story behind that. Maybe it will come out in Lewis's book in 10 years' time. But as for Lewis Hamilton, he said in the press conference, I don't know why they didn't let us race. It was a shame. It was quite clear, their thought process. Don't know what he means by that. But I don't have much else to say. There was never a moment when I felt the race was at risk. Even with whatever Sebastian Vettel was going to do and whatever tyre he was on. It was down to me and Nico to do what we needed to do. They decided to make their comments, the team decided to make their comments on the radio, but Lewis said, I didn't do anything unfair. I controlled the pace, and that is within the rules. But last word has to go in this Mercedes team to Nico Rosberg. You know, since he won the GP2 championship and came into Formula One, he's been a credit to himself, to his family, and to the team as well. He's driven brilliantly, he's very quick on his day. On his day, he's absolutely unstoppable, even by Lewis Hamilton. And I cast my mind back to Monaco this year, actually. Do you remember? Nico Rosberg moved over to let Lewis Hamilton through because Rosberg had problems with his car, and let Lewis Hamilton eventually go to the win. So that shows how sportsmanlike, I guess you could say, this new world champion that we have is. So well on Nico Rosberg. That's it from the Notebook. Plenty coming out throughout the winter. We've got some great